Hello and welcome to NDTV Profit. I'm Vishwanath Nair and you're joining us here while we're discussing the announcement that have come in from the 55th GST Council meet that concluded in Jaisalmer. Of course, a host of announcements specifically with regard to what has happened and what has not happened, things that were expected to come out of this entire council meet and have been deferred now. So what has exactly happened? Well, the fortified rice is likely to see GST cut from 18% to 5%. You've got gene therapy being exempt from GST. You've got some boost for the UPI transactions where no GST will be levied on payment aggregators who conduct 2,000 rupees or less worth of transactions. You've got some pro-farmer measures coming in. Black pepper and raisins supplied by agriculturists will be exempt from the GST, while there has been a boost for the defense sector because extended exemption of GST on long-range surface-to-air missile systems and subsystems has been announced at the 55th GST Council meeting. Now, I have with me four guests, four tax experts who are going to take us through what exactly these announcements mean for the broader country and its citizens. I have with me Jai Sarthi of EY India. I've got Ajay Roti from Tax Compass, Karthik Mani from BDO India, and Shivam Mehta, Executive Partner at Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan Attorneys. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this conversation. Let me start with you, Jaishi ma'am. The first, we've heard a lot from the FM over the last half an hour or so. Now she's taking questions. We'll cut to that a little later. But tell us in brief what your initial thoughts are after all these announcements have come out.
So I think the most widely anticipated changes, which is to do with rate rationalization, scale back of the tax rate on insurance, and the widely anticipated inclusion of ATF hasn't come through. So in that sense, I think the most widely speculated and talked about changes haven't come. But having said that, I think the government has continuing on the right path of calibrating the rates where they need to. The finance minister did speak about certain rate reductions for critical items, including clarifications on agricultural produce, exemption on life-saving T-cell therapy, etc. So those are definitely welcome move. The rest we'll of course have to see the fine print in terms of what more is in store.
Ajay Roti, I wanted to get your views as well. And if you can spare a minute or two about her comments regarding this popcorn story, because that has seemed to have captured the public's attention.
I think, largely on what has happened in the meeting, I would agree with Jayashree that there are 2-3 key aspects, whether it's on compensation, cess rate rationalization, health insurance that we were awaiting, and those have got deferred. See, on the popcorn thing, I think it's just more noise and, what somebody who's not dealing with it daily would see it from where they are seeing. I think, some of these have been issues which are there. States, particularly AARs have taken different views on these rates. So what they have done today is really clarify, where what falls and what rate it will be. It's not a new tax that's been brought in, etc. But the larger point remains that it does not appear simple, for the common man in terms of 3-4 different types of popcorn being brought to take tax at different rates. But that's something that we have to live with given how our GST structure has been there, because the states also have to have some decision-making calls that they have to take, and therefore we've gone into the 8-digit HSN, which really means we will have a lot of subcategories in taxation and rates. What we need to remember while we are looking at all of these things is that the rates on all of these is not decision of one government anymore. So this is not like what it was pre-GST, that it gets taken at the union budget and there's an announcement on number of items and number of rates. It is a decision of the GST Council, and a lot of these gets discussed. Variety of things come into the play as to each state has a different view on why certain rates have to be where it is. So I don't think it is as silly as it appears. It's one thing to comment on social media and make jokes about it, but I think there's there are layers, like the finance minister said. And as somebody who's practicing tax, some of these will be there, and some of these clarifications, and I would still say it is a clarification, are important, and it needs to go that way.
Got that. Karthik Mani, I wanted to ask you, a lot of announcements came about topics which we were expecting will come out, or there will be some clarification or some firmity at the end of this GST Council meeting. A lot of them have been deferred, postponed, or moved to fitment panels. I just wanted to get your view about some of these, like, for example, the whole thing around ATF, or for example, on food delivery.
So the announcements that got deferred, personally, I felt from an insurance perspective, this has been deliberated from a very long time. Whether the life insurance, the term insurance, and the health insurance, whether this should be exempted or not. And these are globally practiced that GST or any VAT or anything on the tax front is not levied on insurance, especially when it comes to health insurance. But I think what Finance Minister announced that the states are not agreeing for relaxation on this, and further deliberation is required in this aspect. So that is something, if the government fast tracks and does the decision before March, it will be great because it will help a lot of insurers, because this is something, let's say there will be a lot of renewals that will be happening in the month of March. So that will definitely help the masses. And second thing is on the, as you rightly said, food delivery apps. It's an issue that they are facing today where there are DGJ investigations, a lot of notices are being issued to these delivery apps. Even though the amendments or the changes that the GST Council is discussing may not give relief to them, but it will at least help them with the rate reduction. But it will be very important that the government has to factor the input tax credit part of it, because the government is looking only at the rate reduction, but how adversely that will impact if the government restricts the input tax credits to these players, that they have to keep in mind before making the decision. Maybe that is a reason why they have held it back. They are deliberating whether ITC should be allowed to these players, considering that they spend a lot on inputs.
I'll come back to the insurance issue, because that's something that requires a little bit more discussion, considering it affects almost everybody in the country. So we will discuss that with all of our guests. But let me get in Shivam Mehta of Lakshmi Kumar and Sridharan attorneys. Mr. Mehta, I want to get your view, initial views at least, and then we can cut into details a little bit further.
My initial views are this council meeting, we were expecting lot of things to come. One was rate rationalization of 148 items. Then what Karthik said about insurance, even delivery partners, so far as these food platforms are concerned, they were expecting some relief from the GST Council. And of course, ATF, not to, we must mention about ATF because ATF is a big cost. The tax rate on ATF is right now around 27 to 30%, which becomes cost for the airlines. So there was a request from civil aviation that ATF should be brought under GST net so that at least the credit can be availed by the airline industry, and they need that support from the government. Now, if I look at how the GST revenues have gone so far, there has been consistent 8 to 9% increase year on year so far as GST revenues are concerned. It's really surprising why states are not agreeing to these requests. If you look at insurance, the annual cost will be only 2,500 crores. Now, insurance has been taken a back seat because few of the states have not agreed. ATF, they have clearly said no. 148 items which were up for rate rationalization, the meetings, the government of ministers have sat on it. There is no discussion on that. We had some release on fortified rice kernels because there was a need there, because in 45th GST Council meeting, they had created a confusion of a GST rate on it. They were meant for PDS system, like our finance minister said. They brought the clarification saying it will be 5%. Popcorn, which is not a major issue there, but I understand when she was explaining that popcorn, because of sugar coated popcorns, should be falling under a category which is 18%, but still there is a doubt that they have clarified. So these are very small segment of overall economy which they have taken care of. But major things which the country was waiting for, at least in this fag end of the year, with some good news has not taken place. If I can say, I'm not very happy with today's GST Council meeting. Hoping for a better one in January, which they said they are going to have again.
All right, Shiva Mehta, not very happy with the outcome of the meeting. Let me go to Jayashree Parthasarathy again. The insurance issue, now that's been debated and discussed at length over the last at least a few months, since some letters were exchanged between various ministries, including states, pitching for, at least removing that GST from life and health insurance. I just want to get your view, Jayashree Parthasarathy. What exactly is the situation, to your mind, the debate exactly? Because it seems that most people agree that there is a need to give that relief to the common citizen, but a decision still seems a little far.
Yeah. So, interestingly, we don't have a very robust categorization of essential services as we have of essential goods in the country. We do have certain essential services like healthcare, education, etc., which is exempt. But to my mind, insurance perhaps should fall under that category. Whether it should be zero, whether it should be a very low rate of 5% is something that perhaps we can look at. But I'm guessing that while from a consumer standpoint, an exemption does seem very attractive. What typically happens if we look at it from a business standpoint is that the minute the output is exempt, there is a whole lot of cost which gets incurred on the input side, and the input tax credit becomes ineligible. So it's not that an exempt or an exemption or an exempt service becomes relatively reasonable or cheap. It would still end up getting loaded with tax cost on the input side. Coupled with that, for services sector, unlike goods, the GST law currently doesn't provide for a refund where the tax on the input side is, higher than the tax on the output side. So my sense is, while yes, we should look at definitely a lower rate, if not a nil rate, for basic health insurance and term life insurance up to a particular limit. I'm guessing the matter is a little complex. Perhaps the government needs to weigh in 2-3 different aspects to this. One is, what is going to be the cost of the insurance to the common man? What might become the cost of business to insurance companies if they are unable to claim credit or take a refund of inverted tax credit? And all of these, I guess, and last but not least, what happens to the exchequer itself, right? So definitely, being an essential service to my mind, or a near essential service, we should look at a lowering of the rate, if not exemption. But I'm guessing that more work needs to be done to balance out these, divergent and varying interests between what the business cost is going to be, end consumer price is going to be, and the revenue collection is going to be.
All right, let me get Ajay Roti here. Your views on the insurance matter, as well as she made a clarification about EVs, electric vehicles, and how the taxation would work there. She's clarified that 5% on new purchases of cars does not change at all. Even a person selling their electric vehicle to another person doesn't really attract that higher sort of GST slab. It's mostly coming for companies. I wanted to get your views on both these issues, sir.
Yeah, so on health insurance, really nothing more to add than what Jayashree has said. And I think the key point there being, a zero rate or a nil rate or exemption will not really, make it 18% cheaper for the consumers today. That's something that we have to remember. And therefore, there is definitely more work that has to be done. And that's really the reason that this has been taking as long as it's been taking. And if you see, this was discussed not now, many years back in terms of a rate reduction, and then states have their views. Therefore, it is going to take some time. On EVs, I think the clarification and what the FM said is extremely important, and not to just go by taking few phrases out of the press conference in terms of a rate on EV. I think she was extremely clear that if a new EV is sold, the government is still continuing supporting the sector, and therefore the rate is going to be a beneficial rate of 5%, and there's no change in that. What they spoke about is only a second sale of a used EV. And that also the FM clearly said that if For example, I was selling a EV which I've used and I sell it to somebody else, two individuals, a transaction, there would be no tax and that would continue. It's really when a business, a company buys EVs, is in the business of trading in second-hand EVs. We have a lot of multi-brand used car platforms, multi-brand used car showrooms that are there. Now those start trading in EVs, there will be a tax. And what we need to remember here is the rate of tax is today important even for the state, because while there's a lot of politics and noise about what get distributed by the central government, we also need to remember on certain sales, and I'm not going to get into too many technical things here, but on certain sales the state gets a 50% tax collection immediately. It does not need to wait for a distribution from the central government. Therefore the rate increases, the states also have a stake in it and the states also push for it. So it's not going to be again, like I said, to just repeat, not the decision of the finance minister, the rate of 18% or whatever rate that will be put on a second sale of EV. I'm sure the states would have also made a request for this. And this is important again as a clarification, because we would rather have this today than litigate and find out later that a second sale of EV is not 5% because it is not a manufacturer who is selling. But today it's clarified that if a used EV is being sold by a multi-brand platform, multi-brand showroom, there's going to be a higher tax.
All right. Clarification that this is not a one-person decision or a one government decision. Thank you for that, Ajay. I'll ask Karthik Mani the next question. The question is with regard to some of the announcements that came from on the agriculture front. Now, of course, these are relatively small. You mentioned the fortified rice point. There's also some relief coming in for pepper and raisin, agriculturists who grow these products. I wanted to get your view. How much of a benefit do you think this seems will likely bring in, or do you think that this is mostly adjusting things at the margin?
It will definitely bring in benefit to the small players. So there are two things. One is rice kernels, as you said, it is going to help the end user. So wherever the rate is reduced, the end user who is using this will definitely get benefit out of this. And second, on the pepper and raisins, if the agriculturist himself sells it, so the point is very clear that if a distributor is selling it, there will be higher taxes on it. Let's say when the agriculturist sells it himself, so there is an exemption given. So it is a good move wherever the small agriculturists who are selling it on their own definitely will get benefited out of this. And one more amendment that the finance minister highlighted is relating to the food items that will be given for the purpose of certain specific schemes where the food is given on free of cost to the like poorer community. So in those cases also they said that there will be an exemption subject to conditions, but on the food articles there will be an exemption that is given. So that's also a good move that has come.
All right. Shiva Mehta, the question to you is with regard to some of the announcements on the financial services side. You've got, UPI transactions under 2,000, so payment aggregators in that get the benefit, with the clarification being that payment gateways are not included in that. You've got some announcements coming in on the penal charges that banks as well as NBFCs collect from borrowers. That won't attract a higher tax. Now, I wanted to get your view on, is this more in terms of getting it clear upfront so that the financial services players and the people who are benefiting from those services both are clear on how much exactly they need to pay?
Okay, so on the penal charges which are charged from the borrowers by the financial institutions, there has been always an understanding that is more in the nature of damages for the breach of the contract, right? So there is no GST whatsoever. Now, today, what has been clarified is that because they are not in the nature of consideration, there is no supply there. So there'll be no GST on it. So it will more likely than not, my sense is when you look at the fine papers, it will come as a more like a clarification, no change in the rate there. On the other hand, when I look at the more important amendment or more important change so far as rate is concerned could be the compensation cess, which is so far as the export goods are concerned. Now, what was happening is if I'm selling, I'm the manufacturer, I manufacture the goods and sell it to you, and you are exporting it, my basic rate of tax was reduced to, GST was reduced to 0.1%. but the compensation cess remains unchanged. So if it is 12%, so far as motor vehicles are concerned, it is as high as 22%. I was supposed to pay 22% and claim the refund. So it was resulting into working capital blockage. That is something that demand was there from automobile industry that was pending for quite long, that they have clarified, or rather they are amending it to say even the compensation cess will be 0.1, which is a big relief so far as exporters are concerned, which also had a mention in the finance minister's speech. But penal charges, I suppose it's more like a clarification which is there.
All right. Jaisalmer Parsati, I wanted to ask one question with you, and I'm going to take a short sort of response from each of the guests. Just wanted to get your view on what you think is probably the key announcement that has come in. To your mind, maybe that will probably mean a lot more than just a GST Council announcement.
So I think maybe a couple of conceptual things I would say. I think directionally, they are definitely saying that they want to give a clarity with respect to exemption or a lower rate on anything which is agricultural in nature. So she spoke about pepper, she spoke about raisins, and the endeavor to kind of, clarify and exempt whatever may be essential. She spoke about, T-cell therapy for serious diseases, etc. So I think that's definitely a move in the right direction. The other aspect which I think this council meeting had from an agenda standpoint was there were, I think, items in the agenda which all dealt with, whether it's quick commerce, e-commerce, or new age, app-based services. While we've perhaps not had, the opportunity of having a resolution to some of those, I still feel that it's something in the right direction where the more the government is able to clarify on some of these nascent issues for new age economies and nascent startups, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction because the theme definitely seems to be that we want to clarify, we want to bring in clarity, and we also want to mitigate litigation while we're at that.
Ajay Roti, quick thoughts. What do you think is probably the one single announcement, or maybe two, that you think are crucial from this GST Council meet?
I would actually cover two crucial things which we have missed. I don't think, in my view, there's anything earth-shattering that's come out of the meeting. One is, I think we've again pushed rate rationalization.
Yes.
See, if GST was is what it's supposed to be, which is a simple taxes, then rate rationalization is a key. Now, 21 is when the group of ministers on rate rationalization was set up, and they were given 2 months time to come up with a report, and we are in 24 and it's got deferred again, and with more time needed. I think we need to do what we did when we started with GST, that we may not get to a perfect solution, but we need to make a start. ATF and natural gas is today outside GST, like petrol, diesel, etc. is. ATF, the problem is the rates, VAT in addition to excise duty that's charged is quite high and effectively comes to 30% in a lot of states. So that is impacting the sector, one, because of increased cost. And second, ATF manufacturing and ATF production itself has certain inputs which have GST. Therefore, there's another leakage there because of the output not being liable to GST. I think bringing ATF into GST was one of the key things that should have been considered today. Of course, there will be revenue implications for states, and that's why probably it could have got deferred. But these are two things. I think there needs to be a push, and we need to move forward on some of these things to make GST, what it was meant to be, which is one tax and a simple tax. So again, to sum up, rate rationalization, getting GST, getting ATF and other things into GST should be the key. And those two are big misses, according to me, in this particular meeting.
Understood. All right. Karthik Mani, your view, quick answers. What is probably the announcement to focus on from this GST Council meet?
I'll follow what Ajay was going on. Instead of what was announced, what is missed out. What is missed out, I think this time the GST Council has decided to deliberate on points than bringing in a change suddenly. Like what happened with the gaming industry, a sudden change came into picture. The industry had to go through a lot of pain. So they have not done that. Let's say whether it's food delivery app overall, as a e-commerce, I think the government is looking at a broader framework. They have to come up with a not with identifying individual issues and solving those issues, have a broader framework for the entire e-commerce sector, whether it is entities like cab operators or entities who are in food delivery or e-commerce itself, marketplace. So that is one good thing that the government is deliberating and trying to bring in some solutions which is business friendly. Hopefully, that is a change that's going to come out. And the second thing is the changes that they have brought in. They are in line with the rate rationalization. And once the rate rationalization happens, hopefully we will have a system where we will have less complexities on the rates. Because today we face a lot of challenges on the identification of rates, like whether it's like, let's say popcorn is a best example. Now they have given clarity. We need the clarity instead of somebody going for an advanced ruling or deliberating on which HSN should follow on. So government has given clarity on the rates. So that is something good.
All right. Lastly, Shivam Mehta, you started this conversation saying that you're not very happy with the outcome of the council meeting. But what do you want to close this entire conversation on?
Okay, just to finish what I started with. Now, if you understand the compensation cess which is levied on many items like cars, tobacco, cigarette, etc., that's going to get phased out in March 2026. Okay, now we are at the start of 2025 at least. So we have 15 months left. Once this compensation cess phase out, they need additional 20,000 crores to compensate the states. At the same time, we were waiting for rate rationalization of 148 items, right? Now, these two things cannot come in tandem. You have to slowly bring these changes. So why I said I was not very happy was I thought there was some decisions which will be taken so far as insurance is concerned, or about some of the products which are there in 148 list items, which they are talking about rate rationalization, but there is no consensus whatsoever. ATF is a big setback. I've already spoken about it. But now each meeting, as the day passed by, each meeting of GST councils becomes crucial because March 26 compensation cess is going to phase out. And you need additional 20,000 crores to compensate the states. So you necessarily have to look around the items. At the same time, you are looking at the rate rationalization. Both the things cannot happen in tandem. You definitely have to take each meeting seriously and take a decision there and move on with it. That's what my take is.
All right, Shivam Mehta, thank you so much for those thoughts. That's all the time we have on this show. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on the guest panel. Jayashree Parsati, Ajay Roti, Karthik Mani, and Shivam Mehta. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. And that's the show. Thank you so much for watching NDTV Profit. Stay tuned for more news and updates.